The Heat are on their way to the Pacific Northwest to kick off their 3-game road trip, so we'll answer some key questions sent in by our listeners and viewers. What's Miami's biggest problem so far? Is there a trade on the horizon? And did the Heat make a mistake by trading for Kyle Lowry? It's 5 burning questions on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. This is 5 burning questions, and we have several questions about Kyle Lowry, Victor Oladipo, Nikola Jovic, and a bunch more. Jay Crowder coming up later in the show, but we'll start with this one. David, what is your top concern for the Heat after this 1-3 start following the homestand to open the season?
I have to say it's the play of Kyle Lowry. I think that's my biggest concern because I'm not sure if this Heat team is strong enough or deep enough yet. And again, we'll be talking about the injuries to Yurtseven and Oladipo and whether or not they'll make an impact at some point. But for now, they shouldn't be that kind of important a factor. They shouldn't be so significant that Miami's success, again, 4 games at home, albeit against top competition, shouldn't be defined by a role player in Oladipo and somebody with very little experience in Yurtseven. You've got enough in that starting lineup to have made a stronger statement in during those 4 games. And unfortunately, the statement coming in from the point guard position is, well, you're just not good enough. And there were 2 decent games, okay games. And aside from that, I'm just not sure that Lowry's going to be able to contribute at a high level this season. And you and I were both optimistic that he was going to be getting into a quote unquote world-class shape, that he was going to meet, the requirements of the Heat organization, that he was going to look at Pat Riley's comments and take that personally and say, you know what, I've got to get better because he wants to win, because I don't doubt that. He says it often enough. I think he is committed to winning, but I'm just not sure if his body is capable of contributing at the point that it once did. And so that's my biggest overall concern, is that he's not fast enough to drive to the rim. He's not good enough defensively. He has moments here and there, but he's not quick enough as he once was to be able to slide his feet and keep up with quicker point guards. And there's a lot of them so far in the Eastern Conference. And I mean, when he takes on Dame Lillard, who's been on a hot tear to start off the season, how is that going to go against, Damian
Lillard, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Curry. Those are the point guards coming up. It's not getting any easier for Kyle Lowry. I'm with you. That's my top concern right now. I want to go back to what you were saying about maybe having a bounce back year the way that you and I had anticipated. One of the things about that bounce back year was him just being more of a factor on offense, taking more shots, being more involved in setting guys up, not being as passive as he seemingly was in his first year. That just has not been the case so far, David. Last year, he averaged 10 field goal attempts a game, 7.5 assists per game. To your point, he's gone backwards. 9.8 field goal attempts per game, 3.5 assists per game, nearly almost like less than half of the assists. Granted, some of this has to do with working Tyler Herro into the starting lineup, giving him more responsibility. His usage is going to go up. But there's more numbers here for Kyle Lowry that just are very problematic, very troubling. His usage rate is the lowest since he played 10 games as a rookie. Just think about that. This is a probable Hall of Fame point guard, a guy who's won a championship, who was a primary option for many Toronto Raptors teams, and was brought into Miami to be that kind of guy, to be that secondary scorer and playmaker next to Jimmy Butler. He has not been a secondary scorer and playmaker to Jimmy Butler. He has not been a tertiary one. He hasn't been the 4th best playmaker or scorer on this Heat roster since they got him. This isn't just a matter of him being 36 years old, although I think that's certainly part of it. But the other part, it's just him just seeming to be passive. And I don't know what the deal is with that. One other number that I want to throw at you, kind of regarding his age, he shot 71% within 3 feet of the basket last year. He's shooting 37.5% this year. And a lot of them, he's just not getting any lift as he's getting to the rim for layups. He's kind of just throwing shots up when he's kind of under the basket. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look like he's in the condition that Pat Riley wanted him to be in. And I want to pose this question to you, David. Do you think that Pat Riley, essentially calling Kyle Lowry out at the end of last season in his press conference, rubbed Kyle Lowry the wrong way to the point where he may have bristled to the point that he's like, you know what, F you, I'm going to just do it my way, or it's the highway?
It's possible. I honestly can't tell you exactly what Kyle's motivations are. And we've seen in the past that Riley, if not necessarily oversteps his bounds, I think he pushes players in a way that they don't necessarily want to be pushed. We're talking about a different era of basketball. LeBron James in particular. That's who I was thinking of most notably. But you know what? Dwayne Wade left because of a friction with the front office, including Pat Riley. I think we've seen other players do that. I think we'll see other players in the future because that's just the nature of who Pat Riley is. Sure. He's direct, he's brusque. There's a purpose and an intent behind everything that he does. Eric Spoelstra is an extension of that. The front office is an extension of that. And so they have one goal in mind, and that's winning. And anything that gets in that way is kind of cut out. And for Kyle, going through whatever it was that he was going through last year, the reasons that he took a significant amount of time off to deal with, maybe that wasn't his focus. Maybe he didn't want to hear about winning because he's committed internally, and maybe that just didn't show up enough, especially when you start making comments about his weight, because I'm sure Kyle's had to deal with these, and it hasn't really been a problem. Yes, he missed his games. That's mostly a byproduct of being 36 or 35 or whatever. It's not about being in bad shape. He's not fat. He's not doughy. I know a lot of people like making those jokes. There's nobody. It
has nothing to do with the shape. We don't have to body shame Kyle Lowry, but he looks slow going up and down the court. Maybe that's because he's 36. Maybe it's the conditioning. I don't know what it is, but when you hear Bam and Jimmy Butler continuing to say, we got to get back on transition defense last night because they gave up whatever it was, 26, 27 transition points. I don't know that it was directed at Kyle Lowry, but Kyle Lowry and Tyler Herro and Max Strus and Gabe Vincent, the guys who are the guards, they're back there. They're supposed to be the ones getting back. Again, I don't know if that was entirely directed 100% on Lowry, but it wasn't not directed at Lowry either, just based on the position that he plays. I have one other thing that I want to talk about because we're going to talk about Kyle Lowry a little bit more. It's just the half-court offense, too. I'm not as concerned about the transition defense. The Heat overall have been pretty good on defense, in transition defense all season, just last night being kind of the exception. But their half-court offense has been a complete disaster. Maybe this actually does have something to do with Kyle Lowry, too. 90.7 points, 90.7 points per 100 plays, according to Cleaning the Glass. That's 20th in the NBA. In the half court. That's really, really bad. This was the problem with the Miami Heat last year. It has continued to be the problem this year. Part of the reason you include Tyler Herro in the starting lineup is to try to fix that. But as much as Herro, I think, has been a positive, everybody else not having a real power forward, Caleb Martin not being as dynamic as you had hoped, Kyle Lowry, everything we were just talking about, kind of bringing everything down. Bam Adebayo struggling here and there at times on offense. Are you as concerned with the half-court offense as I am?
Yeah, obviously, you can't help but be it when you notice Miami struggling to generate any kind of easy looks whatsoever. The ball movement just isn't there, and Lowry is a part of that. So is everybody else. I mean, there's way too much. I sound like John Crotty here. The ball's just sticking in everybody's hands. It's just, Jimmy attacks, Bam attacks, and then Jimmy goes out to the side watching. Tyler attacks, and everybody kind of stands out to the side. And maybe they'll make passes. All those guys are great playmakers, and yet there seems to be this idea that once they get the ball in their hands, that they have to find a way to score. Too often that results in a bad shot, or as the shot clock expires, and it's not good offense. We're seeing that. The numbers bear that out, and you can.
I think some of the offense is okay. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of a reversion to the mean here. The Heat have been shooting terribly overall from three-point range, especially. Last night, Max Strus 0 for 8. Overall, the team was 8 for 33 from three-point range. You've seen a lot of games like that. They're 8th in the league in open shots per game. They're just not hitting them at the rate that they were hitting them last year. Last year, they were the best three-point shooting team in the league by percentage. This year, they're near the bottom. I do think when you have guys like Max Strus, Tyler Herro, Kyle Lowry, who is a good three-point shooter, Duncan Robinson, eventually the three-point shooting will right itself, and those shots will start falling. So I think they're overall getting pretty good looks. When they get the looks, my biggest problem is that they're just not taking enough of the threes. And I hate that I keep having to hammer this point, but they took 33 three-point attempts last night, and that was the most they've had all season. Otherwise, it's been less than 30 or less all year long. This is a team that needs to be routinely taking probably closer to 40 threes a game. Given the strengths of this roster and how much they have to space out the half court offense for guys like Bam and Jimmy Butler too. So that's the other thing, is not settling for those mid-range jumpers, not settling for that weird like 5 to 6 foot range that it feels like everybody on this team likes to get those push shots from. Just finding more 3-point attempts.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You pointed out, I don't know if you looked into the numbers there, that Miami doesn't generate a lot of open looks from the corners. Has that been like, have you looked at?
It's about average. It's about league average from the corners. They're not hitting them at a great rate either. But overall, they're getting pretty good looks from 3-point range when they get them. It's just that the frequency of of their shots, not enough of them are from 3-point. Not a high enough percentage of their shot attempts are coming from beyond the arc. It's too much of that percentage is coming in that sort of weird in-between area that defenses are willing to cede. They're willing to give you that for a reason, just because they're an inefficient look. They need to be getting to the basket too. Their average distance of their shot is less than it was last year. They were getting a lot more shots point blank at the rim last year than they are this year. So they just got to work a little bit harder to get the looks that they want. We're going to talk about...
Is it time for a lineup change in the starting lineup?
Let's talk about that in the next segment then. That's a good question. But first, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Bringing the copy up. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Like hiring a great producer for your podcast or the assistant who makes your day-to-day that much easier, there's nothing like making that perfect hire to help your business. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which makes it incredibly easy and simple to create a free job post. Plus, you can add your job post in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So if you still need to hit your annual goals, get some help around the holidays, or close out that final round of KPIs, LinkedIn Jobs can help you end the year on the right foot. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back here with Locked On Heat, continuing along with our 5 burning questions. David, you had a question there about whether or not the Heat need to make a change into their starting lineup. I presume you're talking about Tyler Herro, but I'm not sure.
I am. I don't. It's working in terms of, obviously he's been Miami's best offensive player, second to Jimmy, I suppose. But overall, like, there's nobody on this roster quite as capable of getting his own shot as often as Tyler Herro. And yes, he struggled in the fourth quarter yesterday against the Toronto Raptors, but overall, I'd say he's been a positive. But given Miami's weaknesses at the power forward position, the fact that they do need a boost in 3-point shooting, maybe you're taking away some of the shot creation abilities of Bam, Jimmy, Kyle, to some extent, if you've got the ball in Tyler's hands too often. So I wonder whether or not a return to the bench might be in Miami's best interest.
Well, let's explore that a little bit, because if we're talking about Kyle Lowry's usage being at basically a career low, I guess part of the reason for that would be because Tyler Herro is in the starting lineup now. And so do you take Tyler Herro out of the starting lineup to get Kyle Lowry more involved in the offense? And I think my initial response would be no. I just think they need to change up how they're using the offense a little bit more. When you and I talked about having Tyler Herro in the starting lineup, you and I kind of imagined this guy who's going to be a little bit more of an off-ball threat, leaning more into the catch-and-shoot threes, which he's an elite shooter at. And that really hasn't been the case. Tyler Herro in the starting lineup has just kind of been doing what he's been doing last year. I looked at the numbers. He's basically running the same amount of pick and roll as he did off the bench last year. But he's doing it now with the starting lineup with other guys who need the ball in their hands, like Jimmy and Bam and Kyle. I just think they need to go away from all this pick and roll with Tyler Herro and just get other guys involved. Have Kyle Lowry run the offense, because that's what he's good at, right? Like, that's why you brought him here. Have him run the offense a little bit and have Tyler Herro run around and zip around the perimeter more like Klay Thompson as opposed to Trae Young, which it feels kind of every once in a while that's how they're using him. It's not quite that extreme. He's only running like 6.5 pick and rolls a game, but still, like, I think I would try to do that before I make a drastic change to the starting lineup, because even if you take Tyler Herro out of the starting lineup, I still think you're left with the same issues in the half-court offense, which is if it ends up being Jimmy Butler or bust at that point, where right now it kind of just feels like it's Tyler Herro or bust, or Tyler Herro or Jimmy Butler or bust at this point. So I would stick with Tyler in the starting lineup.
I could see a 3-point shooter being inserted in his place, whether Duncan Robinson or Max Strus. That was the starting lineup to start off last year. If you're going to go ahead and move with Caleb Martin at the power forward spot, or ostensibly the power forward spot, because I'm not sure exactly what else to call it. There are no other options on this roster. Haywood Highsmith doesn't have it. Dedmon certainly doesn't have it. Omer Yurtseven is probably not the right solution either. So I don't think putting Yurtseven in, sliding Bam down to the 4, and then bringing Max or Duncan into the starting lineup would necessarily translate into that kind of spread offense that we're talking about now.
Yeah. This next question comes from Steve, who writes in, "Hey guys, sending some love all the way from Australia." Hi, Steve. Love the pod as a huge Miami fan for many years. What do you think now, looking back at the Kyle Lowry trade? Watching Goran Dragic doing work for the Bulls off the bench and Precious killing us every time he plays the Heat. Was that trade the right call? I love the leadership and championship pedigree that Lowry brings, but from what I've seen, he isn't the player he once was. Gabe Vincent should almost be starting ahead of him. I know we were first in the East last year, but I don't know that it was about Kyle and more about the coaching depth and the Heat culture. Would love to know your thoughts. We talked about Kyle Lowry a lot, but within just the specific framework of whether or not that trade to send Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa to get Kyle Lowry, do you think it was a mistake? Because Barry Jackson tweeted this as a reminder. They didn't have to do it. They could have signed Lowry into cap space, but they just created a little bit more flexibility in making it a sign and trade as opposed to just signing him outright.
Yeah, I think, in the vacuum, in terms of the deal itself, it was the right move at the time. And we're a year away from Kyle Lowry's addition, a year and some change. And at the time, it was what led many people to think that the Heat were serious title contenders. They had added PJ Tucker to Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, et cetera. It was a good roster, and you just make some change. Point of attack defense was a problem. So who do you bring in? A point guard known for his point of attack defense. A guy who can make the right pass, who knows how to knock down big shots, who has that championship experience. Their window for that was last year, and I think it made sense at that point in time. Not to mention there's a close personal relationship between Kyle and Jimmy Butler. I think that certainly played a factor. You can't dismiss it. You can't overlook it. He was the right player. It was the right fit for him, and it all made sense. Having said that, he is struggling this year. The Precious Achiuwa thing, remember, players are going to get more opportunities on teams where they can get those opportunities, mostly because they're not and I think the Toronto Raptors are not as good, even though they beat Miami yesterday. I think he had an opportunity last year to spread his wings a little bit, to show what else he can do. I still don't see it. I mean, I know he's a rebounding monster. I know he's an incredible physical, a powerhouse out there, grabbing rebounds and things of that sort. But the dribbling is done. The shot selection is kind of wonky. He can hit a 3 and then he can hit the side of the backboard all within the same breath. So I'm not a believer. It's going to take some time for Precious to emerge as a more complete player, more consistently, for me to say, oh man, we really missed the boat on that. And Goran.
Well, no, let's stick with the Precious Achiuwa thing. Look, I like Precious Achiuwa, and you knew that. We talked about it before the draft. I really liked him as a prospect, and I was really excited when the Heat drafted him. As far as whether or not it was worth trading him to get Kyle Lowry, it was. Okay, you make that trade every single time. I like Precious Achiuwa, but he seems to be a little bit of an empty stats guy, at least at this point in his career, okay? I thought it was really telling what Nick Nurse said pre-game. He was asked about Precious Achiuwa, and he said, here's the quote, I'll just read it. He's got an offensive game. He'll shoot. He'll get some drives and things like that. I'm probably more concerned with him getting up and down the floor both ways faster, getting on the glass a lot harder, keeping people off the glass a lot harder, and being more of an all-around player. Cool. You get 22 rebounds. Cool. You're willing to take threes, but Precious Achiuwa right now is a center who doesn't really want to be a center. He's a center who wants to be a wing. And in terms of whether or not those numbers are impressive, yeah, sure, they are. But I don't know that he's the right fit next to Bam Adebayo, even if theoretically he is, because it's about practice. It's about what you're able to do. And a lot of those things that Nick Nurse is saying kind of sounds like what the Heat were talking about when he was here too, right? I'm not trying to knock Precious Achiuwa a little completely, but in terms of moving an unproven player who you question about his want to be an all-around player for a guy in Kyle Lowry who's you don't really question, at least at that point, who has the pedigree and kind of plays the position that you need. And by the way, theoretically is the perfect fit for this Heat team, a guy who could defend at the point of attack. Let's remember that was the reason why the Heat probably lost the finals against the Lakers, that they did not have that point of attack defender. As much as we love Goran Dragic, that's not who he is. And so, yeah, I think, and Goran Dragic right now is the third string point guard on the Bulls. Like, the trade, I understand, could look bad in retrospect, but at the end of the day, I don't think it was that big of a problem for Miami. I don't think it's gonna ruin their title chances. My only thing now is, can you actually move off of Kyle Lowry if it gets so bad? Because I'm not there yet. As much as we want to rag on Kyle Lowry, we're only 4 games into the season. I'm not in panic mode yet. But if we get to the point where he's approaching 37 years old and he's still got a year left on his contract, is he so unmovable that you're just sort of stuck with Kyle Lowry at this point? Because you can't just bring him off the bench. I don't think that's an option.
Oh, and FYI to anybody who doesn't know this, Russell Westbrook is not the answer. Okay.
There we go. Very good. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because I didn't want to see that stuff. All right. We are going to talk about Victor Oladipo and Omer Yurtseven. Eventually, Victor Oladipo will return. Can he really help Miami and their bench issues? But first, David, let's talk about BetOnline.
Yeah, BetOnline, the number one source for all your betting football and the start of the new basketball season. It's already underway. Obviously, find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute. Oh, my copy just went away. Well, up-to-the-minute scores and all the updates that you need. The fastest, easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball, boxing, and golf. Yeah, you have a pick in the World Series? I don't think you've mentioned it a single time.
I don't even know who's playing in the World Series, and I don't care. But I do have a bet that people can place that might, if you're a fan of the Miami Heat, you might not be a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers, but you probably are a fan of Philadelphia starting their season 1-3. You could get Doc Rivers, first coach fired, at plus 175. That's not even odds, but it's pretty good odds for first coach fired if you think he's going to be on the outs.
He's not getting fired. I mean, they'd have to really fall apart this season, and even then, I don't think they'd fire him until after the year. They'd probably just write it off.
Vegas knows things.
Interesting one.
Vegas knows things, David. Vegas knows things.
Well, head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts.
All right, back here with Locked On Heat. We have this next question. Will Victor Oladipo or Omer Yurtseven help the Miami Heat's bench problems? Because as much as we want to talk about the starting lineup, the bench has been getting outscored in nearly every single game here. We just got word this morning, Victor Oladipo not traveling on this West Coast trip, Golden State, Portland, Sacramento, not going to be a part of that. So he's going to miss at least the first 7 games of this season. Omer Yurtseven, he is traveling. We'll see if he ends up playing for the Heat on this trip. But let's just bigger picture, zoom out a little bit. Eventually, Oladipo will play. Eventually, Omer is going to get back into the rotation. Do you think these guys can help?
Obviously. If for no other reason, I think Yurtseven is a little bit quicker than Dwayne Dedmon at this point. I think Oladipo has to provide some kind of spark. Now, how it fits, how many minutes he gets, what the lineup combinations will be, that's up to Eric Spoelstra to decide. And we don't know until we see how healthy and productive these players can be. So if Oladipo comes back and he's what we saw of him at his peak last year, where he was an excellent defender and things of that sort, then yes, he's certainly going to be a contributor alongside any other player in that secondary unit. I think he's going to get some significant minutes towards the end. When Miami was hemorrhaging points in the fourth quarter yesterday, you could have brought Oladipo in instead of Gabe Vincent. I mean, Vincent was fine. That's not necessarily the problem, but I think Oladipo overall a stronger defender at this point, even assuming he's healthy. So if that's the case, then yeah, of course they're going to help. It gives you more combinations. The more options you have, the more tools in your toolkit that you have available to you, the more versatile your lineups can be, the more you can try different things and see what works on any given night. I trust in Eric Spoelstra being able to find that combination. So I do believe that both those players will find a way to help.
They're going to help. I think both of them are going to be part of the rotation right away, actually. And I don't know that I would have said that about Omer Yurtseven prior to the season beginning, but seeing how bad Dwayne Dedmon has been, and it's been really bad. It's been really, really bad. With Bam, the Heat have a defensive rating of 101.1 points allowed per 100 possessions. That would be second in the NBA right now. That's really good. That's elite. Without Bam, the defensive rating plummets to 138.5 points per 100 possessions.
That's really bad.
That is by far the worst defense in the NBA. By far. By a country mile. It's not all Dwayne Dedmon, but it is a lot of Dwayne Dedmon. He looks really slow out there. He is not helpful. He looks just caught in between different players when defending pick and roll. When he's out there offensively, even trying to run pick and roll, those screens just aren't hitting at the same way. And you kind of can look at that and see, all right, this guy's just a little bit older now. And he's clearly several steps slower. He's just not an effective backup center. And I understand why you re-sign him. I understand why you give him $4 million a year. You want to create a chunky salary that you can move down the line, and also buy some time for Omer Yurtseven to develop into your bona fide backup center behind Bam. I don't think that the Heat thought that Omer was ready to be the primary backup and just give him the job. I don't think they were ready to just hand him that job. At this point, I think anything would be better than Dwayne Dedmon as the backup. He's been that bad, and I think that includes Omer Yurtseven. I think he'll be a better option there. Even considering that Pat Riley said, hey, he needs to get better on defense. I think Yurtseven, just by being a little bit younger and a little bit bigger, a little bit quicker, is just going to be helpful. So I think he'll help. I think, to your point, too, Oladipo is going to help. I don't know how much he's going to help. I don't know. But I think he'll be helpful. You used the word versatility earlier. Eric Spoelstra keeps saying how versatile this team is, and I'm not saying it's not versatile, but given all the injuries that they've had, they have not been versatile, right? We've never seen the too big look yet. It's just basically been not versatile, they've just been small. Their best three-point shooters are their worst defenders. Their worst defenders or their best defenders are their worst three-point shooters. That's not versatility, that's just a team full of specialists. And Eric Spoelstra has just had to sort of pick and choose, and so that's not versatility, those are just options, and those two things are very different. This next question. Do you expect Jay Crowder to be part of the Heat at some point? And will he help solve the team's issues, David?
It's an interesting question. There was a report that came out, I believe, yesterday from Sean Devini of Heavy.com reporting that the Heat offered Duncan Robinson at some point in exchange for Jay Crowder, and the Phoenix Suns said, no, thanks. So they weren't interested in acquiring in acquiring Duncan in exchange for Crowder. Having said that, Crowder is already tweeting out pictures or posting pictures on Instagram of him working out. Jimmy Butler's liking those posts. It seems like it's almost predestined, right? Kind of the same way it worked out a couple seasons ago when they acquired Jay from the Memphis Grizzlies. I think Phoenix is not going to find a suitable trade offer because I don't know what team wants to trade a significant piece of their roster or a draft pick or something along those lines for a player like Crowder that is limited by age and function. He's not going to be the lights out shooter he was in the first part of the Orlando bubble. He's going to be a stout defender at times, but he's also older. He's not a playmaker. So I don't see any teams going, yeah, you know what? I want a limited and older player at this point in their career because I think he's really going to boost our title chances. I think he would help in Miami because I think there's a familiarity there. There's just an ethos about the team that seems to bring out the best in everybody. And Jay certainly embodied that when he first came in here. He loved the work. He loved the mentality. He loved attacking Jimmy Butler in practice, going back, back and forth with each other, going back to their Marquette days. So I think he would fit in perfectly. My guess is that he gets bought out and Miami stands pat until then because he probably has the inside ticket to get to Miami. And unfortunately, Haywood Highsmith probably gets waived in the process.
I agree with everything you just said. I don't think that the Heat are going to trade Duncan Robinson. I'm not knocking the report. I'm sure it's accurate. It's not news. It's to me. I thought that was pretty much understood that the Heat were dangling Duncan Robinson for Jay Crowder and that Phoenix wasn't going to do it. Duncan Robinson makes $6-7 million more than Jay Crowder. The Suns, they're being sold right now. Robert Sarver is trying to find a sale of the team. They're already in the luxury tax. They're not adding $20 extra million when you consider the multipliers of the luxury tax to that roster bill when they're trying to sell the team. And also just to bring a guy in like Duncan Robinson, who I think is probably a better player than Jay Crowder right now, but isn't exactly the kind of player that you're paying millions and millions of extra luxury tax dollars for either. So a trade never really made sense. You can argue, well, you do Jay Crowder and Torrey Craig. All right, that's a 2-for-1 trade in the middle of a season. That's hard. And again, Duncan Robinson, nice player, not the kind of player that you're packaging multiple players to get one for. You're not doing a 2-for-1 for another bench player. So I'm with you. I think that the Heat are just hoping that Jay Crowder gets traded to, let's call it San Antonio, a team with nothing but cap space. San Antonio buys him out. Jay Crowder finds his way to Miami. Because if he is bought out, Miami is the leader to sign Jay Crowder. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. So that's the best case scenario for them. Final question here. Are you surprised that we haven't seen Nikola Jovic yet? I understand he was suspended for the Toronto game, but do you think we'll see him soon?
I don't think so. I don't. If he hasn't played him during the first 3 games, I don't see him getting that opportunity. I think there was just a need for Tyler Herro to be the productive player that he was, the scorer, the bucket getter, and that's why Eric Spoelstra felt comfortable going to him as a rookie. I'd have to go back and check the game logs to see how early in the season he was getting significant minutes, but it feels like it was pretty significant. Obviously, with Dion suspended early in the season, Kendrick Nunn, another rookie who was getting a lot of burn at that point in time in the starting lineup, you had an option with Tyler to bring him off the bench, and he flourished in that role.
He was also a lottery pick who was kind of considered in the draft process more pro ready than Nikola Jovic. The whole thing with Jovic is
perhaps
he was more raw, right? Like Jovic, we weren't even sure if whatever team drafted him would bring him over, so that's how raw he was considered. So Herro, to your point though, the Herro thing is more of the exception than the rule when it comes to Eric Spoelstra, who's been a little bit reluctant to play young guys.
Yeah, so I am surprised. I think he would pop. I don't look. He was just too smooth offensively in the limited opportunities that he got during the preseason. He played well alongside the starters. Everybody raved about him. They raved about Jamal Cain too. And then at some point it's just Coach Spo is going to do what Coach Spo does and not play either of those guys. I don't think that breeds the kind of goodwill that you want it to. And I know he has a purpose because Eric Spoelstra does nothing without having a clearly delineated plan A, B, Z all the way through to secondary, tertiary options. At the same time, Jovic looked too good in those opportunities. Like he was part of that comeback against the Memphis Grizzlies. Their starting rotation. He was giving Steven Adams fits, his passing, his shooting ability. And then you kind of deal a blow to his self-esteem by saying, oh, well, we're not going to play you for 3 games. I don't get it. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to work out. I know Spo has his finger on the pulse of that locker room a lot more than I do, but that's from the outside. I would give the rookie an opportunity.
I think we'll see him soon. I just think that when you start the season 1-3, and Eric Spoelstra said this after the Toronto game, he did not expect to start the season 1-3. He thought he probably had a little bit more rope before he had to go to Jovic, right? And look, he's shown flashes. He also picked up 3 fouls in 5 minutes, right? Like Jovic is still really raw. I don't know that he's ready. He's not ready to start. I don't think you could put him in the starting lineup, especially if teams are already attacking Tyler Herro. They're only going to attack Jovic, and that's going to be too many holes to try to plug. But I think you could get him minutes. Like I'm thinking about those Haywood Highsmith minutes where he's basically being used as the third center. I think Jovic could have been used if just a minute at the end of a quarter when you're just trying to buy Bam or Dwayne Dedmon some time so that they don't pick up another needless foul. I think we'll see Jovic relatively soon. I don't know how soon. I don't think he's going to go his whole rookie year without really playing either. I just think that the Heat at this point are almost in looking for answers mode. I do trust this coaching staff and this roster of veteran guys to figure it out, by the way. I think I was a little emotional last night talking about the game. We did the whole scale panic meter, whatever we called it. You said you were a 5 out of 10. And I said I was a 7 out of 10. I'm going to bring myself down closer to where you were, David, probably closer to a 5, where there are concerns about this roster, which were questions that we had about this team coming into the season. Those questions have just been really big questions that they have yet to find answers to. That said, they are in answer-finding mode. I don't know that Jovic is the answer for this team, considering that he's a 19-year-old kid, but he might be part of the solution as they're starting to try to find stuff.
This could be like one of those trick questions. It's like, oh, both A and B are right answers. It's like, do they need to find another power forward? Sure. Could Jay Crowder be the answer? Absolutely. But in the meantime, can you play Jovic instead of Haywood Highsmith, who's going for the Luke Babbitt stat line across many, many games? I think he has 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists in 3-game appearances so far. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Look, we don't want to bag on Haywood Highsmith. He might just not be ready either. And I hope he gets an opportunity here in the future, and I hope he makes the most of that. But it just hasn't happened so far. So why not go to somebody else, put them out there, see what they can do? At the very least, we know what Jovic's strengths are. Like you talk about, and you mentioned this a lot. What does this player do at an elite level? Haywood Highsmith brings energy, and that's about it. And I don't even know that he brings energy at an elite level when he's coming in those spot minutes at the end of a quarter or something like that. Jovic is already an excellent passer, an excellent shooter, and can run the floor at 6'11", which is something nobody else on this roster can do. Like Bam is the closest, and he's significantly shorter. So,
and he's chaotic, but it kind of feels like sometimes this offense needs a little bit of chaos, like just added to it, right? Like maybe it could be a good thing. And look, if he gets into foul trouble, he gets into foul trouble. It is what it is. But I just
take him out,
and that's what you do. I think we'll see Omer Yurtseven coming back hopefully pretty soon. I'm hoping on this West Coast trip. I think we'll see Bam and Yurt play together in the front court. I think we'll see that lineup at some point. I think we will see Jovic sooner rather than later, in some way, shape, or form. Again, probably not starting, but just getting some sort of minutes somewhere. But we'll see.
Against those three teams, which one is most likely for Spo to feature the two big lineup?
Something like Sacramento, considering that it's on that back-to-back set. I could see maybe Spoelstra going there. Or even against Golden State, against their bench. That's a really young bench with Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman. I know they've been there for longer than Jovic has, but they have, I think, the worst or second worst bench in the league, according to Plus Minus. I know just a week through the season, but that could be an opportunity against their second unit. Not against their starters, but who knows?
Yeah. That's going to be a dangerous matchup for Tyler Herro, I can tell.
It's a scheduled loss, man. It's Sacramento and then Golden State. I think there was the same thing last year. I can't. It's never. It's a tough trip in general. You don't have to make it harder by giving them the Warriors on the second night of a back-to-back. As a reminder to help Heat fans get ready for the upcoming season, Official League, the fastest-growing sports merch company, is launching an exclusive limited edition hat inspired by Miami Heat star Bam Adebayo and designed by viral artist NBA Paint. There's only 100 of these hats available for purchase at officialleague.com, and the new silhouette features a funny food character inspired by each player. And Bam Adebayo is Ham Adebayo. The best news is that we're giving away a free hat to one of you. To enter for a chance to win a free Official League Ham Adebayo hat, all you have to do is leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and then email a screenshot of your review to lockedonheat@gmail.com. We've been running this campaign now for a couple of weeks since the preseason, David, and we already have a ton of reviews coming in on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. A bunch of you guys have sent in those screenshots, so thank you for doing that. Originally, we were going to wait until Bam attempted 18 shots in a game to close voting. Not sure when that's going to happen. It was not one of our burning questions.
When it seemed like he was trending in that direction, and then, the regular season started and kind of went back down to where it was before.
So we're trying to wrap up this campaign. So we're going to do this by the end of the week, okay? So you have a specific time. You have until the end of the week to get your 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Send that screenshot of that rating to lockedonheat@gmail.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Our final 2 shows of the week will be recaps of the Sacramento and the Golden State game. So make sure, again, that you're subscribed to get that as soon as those episodes go live. Thanks again for joining me, David.
Yeah, get plenty of rest. We'll have you covered. Don't worry about it.